Do we have sound now? I see sound on my end. I think we should have sound now. Okay. Maybe we have sound for the desktop share. I'll just leave it on that. I don't know. I'm still figuring out how OBS works in terms of the different capture devices. It's odd. Um, Actually, here, let me just switch quick. Try to get the sound set up on. Get rid of this one. Uh, all right. Thanks for bearing with me, everybody, and thanks for commenting about the sound. That's a bummer. Um, okay, yeah. So anyway, I was just talking about why I haven't been streaming for so long. It's been a couple months. My work's been busy, and then I was sick and coughing, and I didn't want to be streaming and hacking into the mic. So so here we are. I looked back, and the last thing that I had shown in a project update stream was at the end of January. So I was starting to build out these high detail versions of the different ships in my fleet, and this was a really exciting thing to do because it started making me feel like I had little bits of my project that were getting close to finished and looking polished, and that was exciting. So so yeah, so that was the end of January. So now it's been 2.5 months. So what's happened since then? Well, again, like most of the work that I've been showing on my project is on the game, so we can continue looking at that. So something that I decided that was really important, and again, this is one of these things that's like everything else in my project has been on the backlog forever. Is I'm building these ships, and then it's kind of hard to test them. It's kind of hard to test them uh, and look at them in engine. So I decided I needed a better way that I could easily view these different ship models that I'm creating inside the game engine. So I started building out the ship viewer mode, and the specific thing about the ship viewer mode that kind of sets it apart from the rest of the game is that um, I wanted to be able to easily sort of create a separate scene graph with lighting and shadow setup and everything that's kind of tailored to just viewing one ship at a time, and then be able to swap between that scene graph and the normal scene graph, because I want this to be a mode I can go to in the game, not just like a separate application that can be launched. Um, so this was some of the first work here, and this is the UI that was left over from the old version of the ship viewer. Um, One of the first things I wanted to pieces of functionality that I wanted to add in the ship viewer is the ability to choose different livery excuse me, for the ship, so you could look at that. Um, Slowly improving the UI, and the UI components that I have for my game. I'm not using the like built-in in-engine ones for Panda. That's the engine I'm using is Panda 3D. I wanted to make custom UI components so I would be able to have very fine-grained control over how they looked. So started reworking the layout. I have special sets of functions for digging around with this, and I think you can see here the note is like improved layout, but you can start to see that I'm actually building out the scrolling text box capability here for these selection boxes. Um, adding adding a title and an animation, so you can't see it here, but starting to like add these zooming in and out animations and a grid background, um, description text that you can scroll inside the box, and then other various fixes and tweaks. So this is it's starting to really look like something here. um, then I pivoted back over, now that I have this nice viewer, to working a little bit on one of the larger ships. This is called the originally it was called the Newton. It's a large three-sided frigate that's kind of like just a larger version of that fighter called the Spire that we designed on stream. I wanted to see, could I take some of the primitives and pieces for building one ship and kind of reuse them to build another ship, so I could kind of get two in one. And this was kind of it was neat to start seeing the ship actually take shape, and be able to take these nice screenshots of it. Something that's important to me is being able to take cool looking images of ships in engine. I think like good low poly art in game is kind of inspiring and striking in its own way. It's not just low poly or whatever. So I'm working towards something that I can take these striking, cool images of without having to go through this high detail, low poly to high detail model render in Blender workflow. And this was kind of a fun day. I remember doing this. Added some functionality to the ship viewer where I can easily kind of manipulate and rotate the ships to nice like fixed positions, and then scroll through the list so I can easily take images of a bunch of ships and engines. So this was a lot of fun. This is kind of, looking back, it's always sort of obvious capabilities that you don't have, and then when you build them out, it's like, oh, this is good. Why didn't I do this earlier? It's also fun for me now looking back at these pictures, because a couple of these ships, specifically this one, I've added a lot of detail to now. Oh, this is exciting. So I started work on a really important ship, and I'm gonna actually show the concept art for this. So this new Corvette is a it is a kind of important ship, because in the story of the game, it belonged to the main character, or the hero, kind of like before he goes on the quest. That's the story of the game. So it's going to feature, I'm planning for it to feature in a kind of an important flashback mission, and then eventually he's going to get it back in the game. So this here goes back to last August. I first sketched this, and the 3D version is a little bit different. I had this sort of vertical layout, and I kind of made it a more traditional horizontal layout, but I have a lot of the same features are there. And this is something that I found really helpful. I think when I was first starting to work on this project, I would just try to model things directly, but even just a quick sketch. I guess this sketch wasn't super quick, but even a sketch of some kind just really makes the process of programmatic modeling a lot easier. So yeah, so this was the ship. Eventually I give it a name, the Hammond, but it's just called Corvette C right now. Oh yeah, I gave it a name quite right away. So this was kind of like the initial version, just with some very basic details added, and then over the next few days starting to add more details. So this was only the shields, and then adding the thrusters, and then adding windows. And then I realized at this point I I realized that there was a bug in my shader for I forget exactly what it was, but the upshot of it was that I have a special shader for radiators that wasn't actually being used. So when you look at these screenshots, you see that the radiators are very like they're very just kind of glowy. I mean, which they should be, but there's no shine or other surface detail to them. Um, Here, with it fixed, um, you see a little bit more shading, and it looks more like a physical object instead of this sort of like abstract glowy thing. So that was a great fix. Uh, More progress on the windows. Yeah, I think this is just sort of like an initial pass to the windows. I was developing utility for cutting windows out of slices of ships. And then, and just to comment here, we'll see more work with markings here in a second, but um, I talked a lot in another stream about how I developed the sort of technique or style or approach to doing things like these windows as polygons, which are kind of layered on top of the ship, um, based on some research I did into how things like this are implemented in the original LucasArts X-Wing and TIE Fighter DOS games. So that's kind of where that kind of got me on this um, path towards things like Windows. Um, Updated some materials, and I found some really nice documentation, kind of guidelines on how to make materials with this more old-fashioned uh, shader workflow. Nowadays, games use something called physically based rendering, and that's more like physically accurate. I'm just trying to use this older method for my game just to kind of give it an older look. But there's still ways to approximate real materials, and there's a lot of tweaking and stuff. Um, Doug Wise asked, "Did you use any components from the other ships in the new main character ship?" That's a good question. So, um, not necessarily exact components. The shield rings here and the little RCS thrusters are kind of like generic models that are used in a lot of stuff, and some general shapes like these kind of squashed hexagonal. They're like the reactors. Uh, Show up in other ship designs. This design somewhat takes after the the owl fighter, which has the radiator sticking out the back, but it's kind of a higher level reuse of components, not like very specific things. Hope that answers your question. Excuse me, I'm still coughing a little bit. I'm hoping to kick it in the next week. Um, yeah, and this is a Corvette, so it's a larger ship. So not all the fighter components would be applicable, but you can kind of scale some more generic parts up and down a little bit. And then I mentioned last time I was kind of on an antenna kick, so I was working on these sort of directional dish antennas, and also getting a lower detail version of the docking ring to stick on here. And also I started testing marking, so this is kind of a fun view. This is it with some diagonal stripes, and yeah, that looks pretty cool. And then I added a functionality called sliders, and I'm going to show a bunch of this at the end. I'll do a little demo. Functionality called sliders that is kind of a way of describing how different parts of a ship could be animated. So I made sliders for like folding up and telescoping and folding down these dish antennas. Okay, so that was February. Now let's see about March. Okay. Yep. So I added a mode to be able to test sliders in the ship viewer mode. This was kind of a short month because things started getting busy here. So yeah, so now I started adding more high detail stuff to the Corvette, and I finally gave the ship a name. So this is the ship that is like the Martin Luther from Uriel's Revenge, and the model of it now is called Scioto. So this is a Scioto, and I'm adding thrusters and shield rings in different parts. It has a ton of shield rings, maybe too many, um, but it's always easier to to take stuff away than add them. Um, Adding little optical sensors, different places. Um, it's always a challenge, like finding reasonable spots for these things. I think something that you can see here in this picture too is that there's like a radar on the front of the Hammond, so that was kind of fun to add. Yeah, and then I was working a little bit on a logo for the project. Just for fun, I made a itch.io page for it, which is still private, but it's sometimes fun to just do things like that to motivate you to think about the big project. I renamed the Newton the Ashinoko, and I added specs mode to the ship's viewer so you can look at those components and stuff in there, and also enabled some changes that made it possible to do 9:16 mode in the ship viewer specs viewer, and that this is nice for making shorts. So on YouTube, they want vertical videos for shorts, so this is just kind of like getting these UIs to work nice in that, so I can make record and make shorts. Adding windows to the Scioto. Added the new dish to the Scioto. It's just really starting to look cool. And then I got fed up with the original skybox that I was using. So basically, since the beginning of this project, I've been using this skybox that I got from NASA. But it's got this really, really red, really bright Milky Way in the background. And I would say just kind of reference wise, most of the sort of retro games, sometimes they have nebulas and stuff, but usually they have a very minimal skyboxes. So I built a new skybox just using the Blender Real Stars uh, package that I got. I'd highly recommend this. I use this for a lot of my like high detail Blender pieces, and had to ding around a little bit to get the stars the right size, but finally got it into the game. And I think the minimal nature of it makes the ship, like, it kind of showcases the ships better and is a better look. But I can always experiment with either of them. So and then I was starting to sketch out actual missions. So that's something cool that I did, and I'll just show you what it looks like. So I at the beginning of the year, I made this content spreadsheet for all of the ships, and you can kind of see how things are starting to get filled in. I did something similar for the missions. So I actually planned out 7 missions for the game. I think each one is going to have multiple encounters in it, but 7 felt like a good start, and I was able to list like what I needed for each one, skyboxes, descriptions, things like that. And yeah, I started building out mission 4. So that's exciting. And started building out some kind of improved functionality for the map or external view mode in the game, which I can show as well. Okay, so that was March. Now, what do we have? We're almost 2 weeks into April now, so what do we have to show for that? A lot, actually. So, let me turn the grid off here. So, added a lot of improvements to specs mode. So, specs mode kind of shows various information about the components, and I just updated how text is formatted to kind of be a nice aligned thing, and enabled specs for more different components of the ship, so that's exciting. Something that there aren't really screenshots of here, but is very important, and that's one of the things I've been working on, is something called floating origin. And I will explain that when I do a little bit of a demo here. But that's just something that makes the engine or the game work a lot better for longer distances in space. And it's really important to getting some of the effects that I want in different missions of traveling long distances at high speeds or having ships come in very far away. Another thing that I should have done ages ago is, if you follow me on Twitter, you probably know that I like to experiment with some motion graphics and other kinds of visual art. And I finally figured out how to programmatically pipe images that I'm generating programmatically directly into FFmpeg without writing them to disk. So in the past, when I'd make animations, I'd end up writing a whole bunch of images to a directory and then running FFmpeg on them to stitch them together. Now I don't have to do that anymore. I can just pipe them right in. Saves disk space, saves time, saving things to disk. It's faster, it's better, and that's how I made the that little animation that I shared on Twitter to kind of promote the stream. So I'm going to be using this to make a bunch of bumper type videos that I'll eventually use in streams. Didn't get a chance to figure that out this week, but I'll be doing that soon. And then very recently, yes, a lot of good stuff in April. For as busy as things have been, it's been a good month. So I started sketching out a second space station. So I think in past streams I've showed Shima Station, which is kind of like the main character's home base. We're going to need other space stations in the game. Some of the missions take place at, usually the missions kind of take place around some kind of space station, not just in the middle of nowhere. There's going to be space stations at Lagrange points, different things. I think that's what this is going to be. And I'm going to dox where I go to church here, but this is a little sketch, little doodle that I made of what the station would kind of look like. And then I started modeling out. And modeling this was really fun because, I've been working on this project now for 2 or 3 years. This kind of whole, let's make a game using programmatic modeling techniques. And I've tried to make space stations before, and it was really fun. I just sat down and did this. I didn't reuse any of my previous space station stuff. I said, let's just start from scratch, and I was able to get really far with it really quickly. So I feel like my tools and techniques are better than they were in the past. And then a couple things. So one annoying thing since I moved to doing development and streaming mostly from Mac is that the engine that I'm using, Panda 3D, has some nice post-processing filters in it, and they don't work on Mac because they're written in the CG shader language. And one of them that I really liked was this sort of glow or bloom filter, it's called. It might be hard to see. I'll zoom in a little bit here, but you can see how excuse me, how these, like the windows and very bright white areas are have a little bit of a glow to them. So I've something that I've been meaning to do for a long time, finally got around to it, is wrote up my own post-processing shaders in uh, um, the OpenGL shader language. Excuse me. And and it took a little bit of testing and experimentation and looking at a few different implementations, and I'm doing some very simple things that could be better, but it's at least something rather than nothing. So I have that, and the very last thing that I was doing is starting to work on getting the second space station in the game and putting some windows on it. So talked a lot here. Let's take a look at what some of this stuff actually some of it actually looks like. So let's take a look at the ship viewer here. The space station is very large, but there it is. You can see the glowing windows. Let's just go up, start back with some of the smaller ships. So we have this nice ship viewer. The lights and shadows are always sized to the ships. Actually, the ship model itself is scaled up and down. And we're doing these nice animations in between. We can select the different livery and read descriptions. And then furthermore, we can go into specs mode and look at the different specs. We can read about them. If there's longer than one, page, we can read. We can scroll through specs, page up and page down. So this was long overdue, and pretty exciting. Yeah, and this ship viewer is kind of fun with the animations. I wanted to build something that could make striking visuals. I could record some videos of, which I've, in the meantime, since I've done these streams, I've shared on YouTube, and it's neat. I think it helps you get a sense of scale for the world and how the different ships are related in size. Some of the other features that I was talking about, we can like stall out the rotation, and we can like position things nicely. We can position things nicely, and then we can like turn the UI off and then scroll through. If we want to take some nice images of what we're building, or screenshots. And you can see the glow here. I think this just looks really nice. It's kind of a subtle effect, but it just adds that little bit of convincing that these are actually glowing windows and not just white paint or something. Some bigger ships here in kind of various stages of completion, but it's fun to just be able to go through and look at all of them. Some of these we've built together on stream. So this freighter was one that we built on stream. The spire we built on stream. It's fun looking at all of these shipping containers and turrets. This is Shima Station. This is the first, like the main character's station. I need to maybe come up with a different mode for looking at space stations. This was the first space station that I built, not too much to write home about, and I think it might be a little bit broken. And then this new one, which is looking great. I can't wait to get this in game and fly around it. So there's that. Now, some of the other stuff that that I was talking about. So, first of all, talking about that scene graph for the ship viewer, you can go into ship viewer mode from the rest of the game and go and go back. That's kind of an important capability, right? And then if we just do a free flight here, there might be a little bit of weirdness here with the floating origin, but let me see here. Just pause it. We'll go into external view, zoom out, and when we switch between targets in this view, we get a nice animation that kind of helps you understand the position. This grid stays fixed in the XY plane, but the camera view switches so that you're always orbiting around the coordinate system of the ship that you're looking at. And I think that this is kind of cool and striking. If you turn the HUD off, it looks pretty cool. So we can kind of switch between different modes here. There's different modes for like looking at a target versus looking at like looking from you to the target or from the target to you. But yeah, this is kind of a nice way to look at things and get a feel for the layout of the scenario. And I'm just gonna quick bring up a different scenario. So this was mission 4 that I was starting to build out, and yeah, we've got cutscenes enabled. So we run this, we get a nice title. You can see the new skybox, and you can see here that these ships that we're moving towards are like 25 kilometers away. And in the past, without floating origin, if say these ships were at like the origin of the coordinate system and I was 25 miles away, you would see like noticeable jittering of the geometry due to floating point precision issues. And with floating origin, basically we still keep all of the ship's coordinates in absolute position, but before we render, we just make sure that the player is always at 0 and adjust everything else accordingly, so that way there's no jitter around the player. And if there is jitter, it's going to be like far away from the player, so they shouldn't see it, even if it's just because most of the time in this game, other objects like other than the cockpit of your ship are not right on top of you. So this seems to work pretty well, and it kind of gets at that long distance and high speed feeling that I want this game to have, where it feels like you're in space. I don't want this game to feel like you are sort of derping around derping around in, you can see the sun glowing there. I'm I'm colliding with these other ships. I don't want it to feel like you're sort of derping around in a small, limited area. I want it to feel um, like you're crossing big distances and going fast, and I want there to be interest um, in that, not 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 so much like, oh, every level is full of asteroids or something. Like the space games that I grew up with were interesting, and they were like in deep space with nothing around. So that's that's what I'm going for here. Doug Weiss says very cool opening animation to that mission. Thanks. The I have a capability to basically say make a cutscene where you have the camera sitting here and then have it follow like a certain offset from a certain ship, and then throw a title up on there. So that's kind of what that is. And you could conceivably break to a view like this, like inside of the mission as well. It's just the game is just running during the cutscene. It isn't like a specially written animation. It's just how the camera's sitting and following things. So that's fun. I don't know why it keeps opening the window down there. That's funny. But yeah, I'm trying to think if there are any other. Oh, I forgot I was going to show the slider. The sliders capability here. So here, let's this down. So you can see those dishes. So I can fold it up, extend it, and retract it and fold it down. So that's ways to have nice control over certain parts, like in cutscenes or for different reasons. You know, like if I had a ship like an X-wing where you needed to move the S-foils into attack position, that would be using a slider would be how you'd implement that. So yeah, that's about it for the progress. I'm really I'm really excited with just kind of like checking these things off the list. That making this spreadsheet was one of the best things I ever did for this game, as far as really helping me get out of just kind of dinging around with it towards getting somewhere with it. So that's been great. Yeah, so just a couple other things I wanted to talk about quick. Let's see, we've been going. See how long we've been going for. Almost an hour, I think. Yeah, 45 minutes or so. Yeah, just a couple other things I want to talk about, as long as I said I was going to. So, something that I like to do on these streams is talk a little bit about different inspirations for my project, or references that I have. And something that I've been doing is I've been trying to be more intentional about starting to collect references and resources, and not just sort of make stuff that seems good to me, but like try to find where these ideas or things that I find aesthetic, or like understand the things that maybe my target audience for this project would like. And it's a game, it's a multimedia project. I have my fictional setting, but the goal here is kind of like is like this a multimedia project, kind of like you would get with the experience of like a computer game that you would get in the mid 90s, right? So I've shown before, I've collected a couple I've collected a couple of big box games that I enjoyed as a young person because I wanted to understand how they did how they did their manuals and um, things like that. I just find these manuals and technical guides interesting. How they mix lore and game information. It's just a really neat like artifact of a fictional setting in my opinion. And a game that I'm not that I actually never played really as a kid came up, and I was so impressed with what I saw in terms of the way that it presented lore and the presentation of the manual that I had to get a copy. So I'll probably talk more about this once I have more time to look at it. But I got this complete in box copy of Star Siege. So I never played Star Siege. I played a little bit of the demos of the Earth Siege games. So they were kind of like, I mean, maybe a not so nice way to put it would be like a ripoff of Mech Warrior BattleTech type stuff, kind of like these mech games. And Star Siege especially um, seems to have like doubled down on trying to make cool lore. So I wanted to get this and look at it, and I'm just going to show you guys the manual. And also included with this game is what they call the a compendium. It's one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Now for all I know, the lore itself could just be just total crap, but the presentation is A plus here. So let's see here. So these are beefy manuals too. I always like to see that. So you have the pilot guide, and dynamics is interesting. I haven't played a lot of their games, but I believe they made the original Red Baron game. So they're kind of a maker of simulations, just like just like the group, which wasn't really LucasArts, but the group that made X-Wing and TIE Fighter, they made World War II simulation games before those games. Dynamics made other like real world simulations. So this is just the manual, and it's really good sized, and it's got this kind of cool like pencil art style. And right away you see interspersed in the manual you have these short stories, and I think that's really cool. And profiles of characters. So it kind of has this appearance sort of like like an RPG guidebook. This is somewhat more comprehensive in the way of mixing in lore and stuff with the manual. Than even stuff like TIE Fighter, which had that novella that it also functions as a manual. A lot of character profiles in here, and then there's along with the manual there in here, there's like the technical guide that shows all the different vehicles. And this game is kind of interesting because it's not just mechs. There are like a lot of like tanks and construction vehicles, and even I think there are, maybe there aren't. I was gonna say I thought there were like some aircraft as well. And then there's even pages and pages about the weapons and other components. So, you know, reactors, shield generators, computer systems, all the numbers. I think this stuff is so much fun. So it's neat to see this. But on top of that, so not only is the manual sort of rich with lore, they include this Star Siege Compendium, which is almost as thick as the manual. And look at this. It is actually like full color. The manual is black and white. Like not super glossy. This is full color glossy. And it's got all these different styles of artwork, kind of concept art, drawings, 3D renderings. It's very 90s, right? All kinds of different fonts used just for the heck of it. I think some of these are kind of like screen captures from the cinematics that are in the game. And kind of like the manual, the first part of this is like a short story, and then there's like a timeline, kind of RPG style articles about different factions and important characters. This is kind of pretty. I wonder if some of this stuff, like this is a painting, like that looks like a real painting. I'm wondering if some of this wasn't material maybe from the earlier Earthsiege games, because there's so much here. Like, I don't know, just thinking about what it would cost to make something like this is kind of mind-boggling. And I mean, I don't think it's really stock art. I mean, it all looks very handmade, you know. I just get a kick out of this. The quality of it all isn't like super high. Some of it looks kind of amateurish, but it's just neat. Like, I don't know if this is all concept art or they just had all the artists, you know, take a couple days one week and just do a bunch of illustrations, you know, just all kinds of different styles, different fonts. It's just really fun. This is mostly history. Yeah, and then you have stuff like this. I'm wondering if this isn't illustrations from Earthsiege. The Earthsiege games. Yeah, just look at this. This is really cool. I'll have to go through this again sometime when I have my overhead camera set up. But yeah, so there's a ton of lore. And then it also gets into so there's another big short story here in the middle. And then it also gets into a technical reference too. So yeah, the last chunk of it is the tech manual, which goes over a lot of the same information as in the manual, but it's in color. It's kind of more focusing on the lore of the, you know, different components and technology and stuff, rather than the raw game numbers. Kind of mixes the vehicles and the weapons and components and stuff together, rather than having them in separate sections. And this is kind of inspiring too, because all of these illustrations look to be basically in-engine screenshots from the game. And they're all very colorful and very striking. So this kind of goes back to what I was saying at the beginning, where I kind of have this goal of the engine itself being capable of you being able to set up and create these kind of striking, colorful, eye-catching images in it. Yeah. So this was something that was really neat to discover because, like I said, I played just little bits of Earthsiege 2, I think. It was on there was a demo of that game on another game disc that I had. But I wasn't really familiar with Star Siege. And people, you hear about Tribes. Tribes was kind of like the follow-up to Star Siege. So you hear about Tribes, but you don't hear too much about Star Siege, and it was neat discovering that it had such a cool presentation to the product itself. The box is just really pretty too. It's kind of glossy, and then it's got the fold open cover, which makes note of that compendium. Like it's pretty clear that a selling point of this was that lore. And you don't hear people talking about Star Siege lore, so I suspect that there's nothing too spectacular about it, the story itself, but A+ for effort, and it's going to be fun to look at this and think about what I can do with my own project, and how I can take inspiration from this. All right, so that's all I have to say about that. I'm sure there'll be more to say about that in the future. And I know Katie has a kind of an interest in these kind of guidebooks and world encyclopedia type stuff. So sometime we're going to do a stream together where we look at different character guides and technical guides and stuff that we have and kind of share our thoughts about them. So stay tuned for that. Okay, so last thing before we go, I said I was going to share some talk about some mysterious lore tweets. So me share my desktop again. Okay, so something that I've had fun with on Twitter is kind of making these I call them cryptic book tweets or mysterious lore tweets, where I riff on some viral tweet, usually like from masculinity Twitter or some such, and using the lore from my books without saying, usually without saying, here's my book. And these are kind of fun, and I thought it would be kind of fun to do as a regular segment on my project show, just to use a couple of these lore tweets. Like, let's look at them and use them as a jumping off point to talk about some of the lore of my fictional universe, because it's hard just to sit and just come up with some topic to talk about. But here I've made content for myself. So let's just take a look at the first two. So I guess this was back in 2021. I feel like I haven't done so much of these lately. I went through and made a whole big list of them, but we can look at a couple. So yeah, there's a lot of them. So this one is from back in 2021. So Murray says, Murray Rothbard, it looks like, is giving us some advice. Cancel your TV subscriptions, shop local, homeschool your kids, work in a trade, become an entrepreneur, build strong communities, eat healthy, exercise, get sleep, and reduce dependence on big pharma as much as possible. Spend time with friends and family, bear arms, resist tyranny. And I I had to say, drop out of college, move to Mars, join a space privateer company, sleep with your coworker for months, ignore her demonic hallucinations, leave her out of guilt, follow your boss's prescient vision to a crashing ship in the desert, copy threatening coordinates, head to Saturn. And if you haven't read my book, this is basically the backstory of the main character, Brian Zax. And some of this takes place before the story starts. Like the story starts basically at the part where he is following his boss's prescient vision, or what appears to be a prescient vision, to a crashing ship in the desert. They find coordinates, they head to Saturn. That's the inciting incident of Uriel's revenge. This one, it looks like this one is about some rich person who wants to establish a floating colony on Venus. I often make these tweets where I use the little eye emoji. When you see this, that's me saying that there's something like whatever this is in the lore of my fictional universe. So there's actually there's some very rich families in my story who have a floating colony on Venus that ends up being a place where a significant battle happens, and this is several hundred years before Uriel's revenge, because it's an event that has a personal impact on several of the main characters of the Fountain Mechanism. So there were some evil, I believe it was Junia branch and Sifter people there, and then there were some people from the Knights of Uriel who came to try to stop what was going on and hopefully kill a bunch of the evil characters. And then a third party showed up, threw a wrench in everything, and screwed things up for everybody. And that's kind of an important event in the backstory of the Fountain Mechanism. Let's skip over this one and this one because I don't want to talk about those topics on YouTube. This one, so normally I don't like the IRL. I don't really like the whole aliens are demons discourse, but this one struck me as funny because because in my books the aliens, right, the nomads, which are kind of like extra dimensional aliens, are probably demons, and many of them actually do confess that Christ is Lord. So I thought this was kind of an appropriate image for my fictional universe. Let's do a couple more. Okay, this one, if you've followed me for a while, you know I like to poke fun at these two. So these are a couple of Collins, Malcolm and Simone Collins. They're a couple of elites who have some ideas about kids or something. I don't know exactly what their deal is, but to me they just look like villains. And I think I originally retweeted this with eyeballs because they they remind me of the noble families of the Rami from my world, who they're basically members of this ancient cult who had a genetic predisposition that allowed them to communicate with the nomads, the extra dimensional creatures, and they have sort of a breeding program where there's like the main bloodline and noble houses, and they kind of manage it to a degree so they carry on that genetic predisposition to being able to communicate with nomads and maybe do magic or other mysterious powers. And these two, they just look like, if I had to imagine, especially what the House of Owlus or Junia branch, which are kind of like maybe some of the better bad guys and some of the very worst bad guys. If I had to imagine what they look like, they'd just look like these two with dark glasses and the kind of smug look to them. So Um, those guys are fun. Let's do one more. Um, I saw one below that I want to talk about. Oh yeah. Uh, let's see here. Actually, let's just keep going from the top because I want to be able to come back and continue this later. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. So this is one of these manosphere type. Oh, why did it do that? This is one of these manosphere type tweets where somebody is complaining about, maybe rightfully, you know, don't get married because you can get screwed over by divorce laws or whatever. But just the blunt way he put it's kind of funny. Don't marry. The laws can destroy your life. Use adoption or surrogacy if you want children. So I did. My riff on it was reminder to young men: do not marry. Spill your blood and bile into gashes in the world fabric, and pray that the lower noumena rise up unto you an army of the souls of the first world, ensconced in burning flesh, more real than yours, if you want children. And this is this is a reference to some lore that's not really in any of my books yet. So much the lower noumena are some kind of like weird machine, kind of like spiritual machine beings that live in the like lowest layers of reality. Like in my stories, you have the physical world, and then you have the ethereal realm, which is where the nomads live. And you could imagine kind of like a stack of layers of the world going down and down. The lower noumena would like live in the bottom, and there are some mechanics by which there is maybe a like different how would I put it, like different iterations of the world, uh like maybe there was a world before the world became formless and void and God created the earth, right? And then like maybe when the world um you know when the world passes away and there's a new heavens and new earth, um those worlds are kind of like cycling up and down from these lowest levels of reality. And um maybe the souls of people who came before or maybe are yet to exist are down there. And I think the spill your blood and bile is I like to be a little bit gross sometimes, but in my fictional world, you access things with like the spilling of blood because it kind of creates a tear or a gap between those layers of reality. So I don't know if you really see anybody do it. Well, yeah, you do. In Uriel's Revenge, there's a scene where Eric, after having his leg, um, he gets a whole bunch of shrapnel in his leg from a landmine. The Knights of Uriel patch him up using blood magic. Basically, they spill some blood, and then that allows a nomad to channel its energy into the physical world to heal him. So I'm picturing something like that here, where you're performing some kind of magical ritual that involves spilling your blood with the goal of reaching down into very deep layers of reality and maybe finding some souls down there that can become an army for you. So that's what that is. Um, we'll we'll talk about some of these Nephilim tweets and and some other ones next time. I'll figure out some way that I can check some of these off, and we'll make sure that we don't repeat ourselves. But that's it for tonight. Thanks to everyone who watched. We're gonna try to get back into more regular shows, and I wanna do some more live coding, and in the process of me studying some of these inspirations and references and taking notes, I want to bring that and share it with you, and kind of make a video journal of what I'm learning and what I'm gaining as an inspiration. So stay tuned for that, and probably sometime with Katie, we'll do another Lego stream too. We started that Lego Galaxy Explorer on this channel, and we'll continue that sometime soon. But thanks again for watching. If you don't already follow me on Twitter, stay tuned for project updates. I've been trying to post some shorter, like non-live stream videos to YouTube as well when I can, so watch for those. But yeah, thanks again for watching, and